So now, please, Phil, share.
Sure. Thank you, and thank you all for being here. This has been such a great, such a fun project to be a part of. And so Cairns was written, I'll very quickly tell the story of how the book came about, or how the poem came about, which is different from how the book came about. But the poem started out just as what I thought was kind of a longish poem. It wasn't nearly as long as the full collection is. And if you haven't, well, you've seen them on the walls, of course. They're these tiny, tiny little poems. There's 72 of them in the book. Probably wrote about 100 of them, but 72 of them are in the book. They're all 44 or 45 syllables long. They're super short. And I had an initial poem that was about 14 of these, and I thought, oh, that's great, I finished this poem. It's a little long, that's cool. And showed it to a friend, and she gave me some feedback on it. And then about a month later, she sent me an email and said, hey, how's that manuscript of yours coming? I said, I'm not working on a manuscript, what are you talking about? She's like, that's Sisyphus thing. Oh, that's just one poem. That's not a book. And she's like, oh, okay. And then I started thinking. So, and 4 months later, there were 100 of these little things instead of 14 of them. So it was a lot of fun. And I'm going to read a couple dozen of these little quick things, just 12 or 13 minutes worth, and then we'll turn things over to John. And the one thing Rainer didn't mention in his introduction is you can also buy the prints. So do that. But buy books too. But buy the art. It's spectacular. So I think the only thing you need to know about the book, aside, which you probably already know from looking at the images, just in case, it's a retelling of the Sisyphus story. So we all know the character of Sisyphus, but just in case, was actually a real human being. A king who was a bit of a schmuck, and both in real life was apparently a terrible person, but then mythologically even more of a terrible person, who was, for various crimes, including imprisoning the gods in various ways and tricking them, was condemned to eternity of pushing a boulder up a mountain, never quite getting to the top, having it fall down, and having to start over the next day. But he actually did live, and his actual crimes included things like trying to murder his siblings, seducing nieces, killing guests in his home, the usual.
Don't forget, copy.
So this is Cairns, or part of it. In recognition of my life, the gods provided me in death this mountain, this stone, and forever. We all get that. But what good would forever be without a mountain, a stone? Sisyphus, the stone whispers, are you awake? All night its weight tears my limbs. All night it whimpers in my ear, so that if I dream of the sorrows of stones. No, I say, I'm sleeping. The first time I scaled the mountain, those early years here in the dark, this body-breaking stone was only a pebble. In your sandal, right now, you surely have more or less the same one. True, I angered the gods, and I've learned what mortals say, my toil pointless, a fate to avoid. But to be a god's concern is to be a god. Your fates are just like mine, but mine I earned. When I despair, the stone reminds me how once this path was flat, a blackened plain, how someone spent their own sad forever to build rock on rock this peak. That was me, I remind the stone. Sisyphus asks the stone, "Are you awake?" I dreamt, I say, that I pushed a stone up a mountain. I hope I wasn't heavy, the stone replies. It wasn't you, I say. It was some other stone. My fate, some say, is an absurdity. Well, whose isn't? In the ski lift chairs above me, perdition's couples always learn too late they hate each other. There is no snow. They have no skis. Without someone to bear it, what is a burden anyway? Call me your stone, wails my stone. Sure, stone, I pant, shoving it onward. No, whimpers my stone. I want you to call me your stone. Listen, when I'm nearly at the top, beyond earshot of all you there on the ground, the stone cries out, as if it is human, as if someone else's hell is to be the weight I push. Sisyphus, the stone asks, "Why do you love me?" Just how, I scoff, could I ever love a stone? But its weight feels strange. I didn't ask if you knew how, explains the stone. I ask you why you do. One day, we agreed, just for a change, that I would climb the mountain on my own, and the stone would do some stone stuff on the ground. Then, without a thought, I bent down just like always to lift the stone. Every morning, the weight of the stone feels unbearable. Every day, I bear it and bear it and bear it. Light fails and the stone slips and I bear it. Night falls and I'm still this and I bear it. Atop the mountain, the gift shop and scenic car park are packed as always. Kids bicker, parents curse flat tires. The stone falls. We all stare. I still can't tell whether they're in my hell or I'm in theirs. Flowers rise through the flames, stems scorched, parched lips open, as if even flowers sin and must atone, even bees. One sip at a blossom's scalding well, and they flare like matches. All things have a hell. Sisyphus, the stone asks, "Are you awake?" We need to talk, it continues, about tomorrow. There's no tomorrow, I say, just more todays. In that case, the stone says, let's talk about today. Even here, where every day is the same, some days are worse than others. Sometimes I wish, the stone muses, I had maybe just one side covered in a bit of moss. It's not even noon. I watch it some days knowing why it fell. My will was weak, my knee bent back, my damned arm broke. You were lazy, I scold myself. You were small. Most days, though, the stone falls because the stone falls. Sisyphus asks the stone, "What is my name?" How bare then my bloody hands seem, how stifling the air, how high the mountain, how heavy, heavy my companion. Stone, I answer, your name is Stone. If my task's the stone, what is the stone's task? I don't know. But halfway up, we stop to check its text. Who writes you, I ask? The gods? The gods, laughs the stone, deleting them all. Who doesn't block the gods? Not this gloom, not this tired dim, but final, godless dark. Sure, who here hasn't wanted that? Many try not to be. Once, as it fell, I fell in the path of my stone. It almost worked. Hell's flowers, whatever you've heard, are more than thorns. In the foothills, my path winds through them. Streams too, sweet waters, and around them cool, sweet air. As in life, it's beauty that makes the rest here hard to bear. The stone is sick. About this, it says nothing, suffering for once in the way of other stones. Still I push, still it falls. Though now I see, how did I not before? The weight its falling must be. What will happen to you, the stone wonders, when I am gone? We rest there for a little bit. They'll give me, I say, another stone. It isn't true. There is no other stone, but I say it. Every night, the devils go home to their families. The fires wheeze out. Cold rains weep through the smoke. I'm awake, I tell the stone, though it has not asked. I'm awake, I say again. I'm not asleep. Every day I fill my pack with stones. Every night I drop them in the swiftest turn of the stream. Years burn off like fog. I dream often of a home built of smooth, worn stones. I never built it. I'll never love the mountain. Its distant profile, yes, the view from near its summit, but not the mountain. A weight, though, I know how to love. You carry it, even after it's gone, you carry it. Stones shaped like bread for hunger, stones carved by waves for thirst. For loneliness, stone faces, stone words. Eat, drink, listen if you must. If you want to last, though, you'll have to learn to let the stones be stones. Thanks.
Oh.
So that's like a third of it. There's plenty more in the book. Shortly after I finished the book, I sent it to the publisher, Christine Law Source Press, who has worked with me on my last 4 books, and is an angel. I was lamenting to her that it felt so short, because the poems are so tiny. And, usually if you buy a book of poems, like you can read a handful of poems, you need several hours to really read a book of poems. But this you can read in a half hour. And there's this little capitalist voice in my head saying, like, this is a ripoff. Who's going to buy this silly little book? And so she said, well, hey, she's like, first of all, who cares? But second of all, maybe we could put some art in it. Maybe do you have a friend who might be interested in working with this? I said, I'll give that some thought. And then a magazine, an online magazine, had published the first section of this. And I posted a link to it. And then I got a Facebook message from John saying, hey, let me know if you ever want to collaborate on something. As it happens. So the timing was really just perfect. And I sent John the manuscript and he looked it over, and I'm going to let you take it from here and talk about what that was like for you and where it went from there.
Thank you, Bill.
You bet.
So, this was happenstance almost, I guess. But I've been kind of looking for a project like this. And I've never collaborated with anybody. So this is interesting because it's a very different dynamic working with somebody else in a totally different media, poetry versus visual art. So it was a real challenge, and it's something I want to do as an experience. So I tend to overthink things, and I found it incredibly difficult to interpret somebody else's work, and it's a very serious level because it's the basis for what I was going to do. When we first talked, I pretty much immediately had the overall idea of what I wanted to do. But when I got down to the specifics, it's like, it's tearing my hair out. And then it occurred to me that the approach is that instead of taking not even a literal, but anything approaching a literal interpretation of each poem, for instance, that I would instead make a parallel effort. So I have this theme, I'm going to work that theme myself. So that's pretty much what I did. And I created a total of 16 images. The first 4, I started over. So this is just put them aside. And then I ended up making 12 finished ones. And when I was done, I gave them to Phil. I said, here, you figure out what you want to do with it. I know how you about it. Just do what you got to do. So that's what we did. So one of the things I immediately came up with, and I didn't question it, and what's funny is no one else has ever brought it up, is the stone. And I was thinking, well, how do you draw a stone that makes sense visually? It's just not, how do you draw a stone? And I had the skull. So I said, the skull is kind of a stone. And it becomes metaphorical, it becomes a lot more interesting than a stone. And it's like, how big is this stone that this poor guy has to move all day long? I mean, you see the cartoons where the stone is like, 9 feet in diameter, he's not going to be able to move that. But, if you had a stone this big, it'd be 20, 30 pounds, carrying that all day long would be a task. So that's where that came from. And like I said, no one's ever said, that's not stone, this is skull. So that's work. So, anyways, so a lot of this is somewhat free association. I didn't do any intellectual analysis on these things. It was more like these images came to me, and I just took it from there without, again, trying not to overthink anything. And so some things have to do with comparison. Here we are. The hand is the man, the skull is the stone. This is the crowd, which is probably the most literal image. I had two similar images called Sleep, where I have the mountain in the background and the stone in the man. So there's maybe more, a little bit more little. But the other images were really more free association, running man, a upside down man, stretching man, tied man. Again, kind of free association. So that's, I guess, my conceptualization. So I also want to talk about my technique, because people seem to be interested. So these are all intaglios. So an intaglio print, intaglio means to scratch, etch. And an intaglio print can be an etching, dry point, engraving, gravure. And in general, what it is that you are creating a scratch or a channel in your plate. And when you ink it, you're forcing the ink down into that channel, and you remove the ink from the upper surface. And to print, you put a piece of paper on there, and you force the paper into that channel. And a lot of like fine commercial printing, like a high-grade book might be gravure. You'll see that instead of lithograph. But an etching is an intaglio. And how an etching is done, and a few of these are etchings. How an etching is done is that you start with a metal plate, typically zinc or copper. And this is zinc. And it's coated with a resist, which is basically a waxy varnish. That is very, very easy to scratch through. So this is how Rembrandt did his prints. So it's very easy to take a needle, and all you're doing is scratching through that resist. You're not scratching the metal. You're just drawing on the resist. And then that is put into acid, or in my case, I use electroetching. And the electroetching, or the acid, bites into the metal. So anywhere the metal is exposed, that you scratched away with your needle, your metal gets bit, they call it biting, where the metal is removed, and it creates this channel. You clean all that off, and you take your ink, and rub your ink in, and then you wipe the ink off. Quite a laborious, messy process. And you're left with your image on the plate that's only in the grooves. Then you take a piece of paper that has to be a good heavy rag paper, and it's moistened. You moisten it, let it soak for several hours, and makes it soft. But it's also very strong paper. And it's put on there, it goes through a roller press. It layers the felt on top. It goes through a roller press, which forces the paper down into those grooves under great pressure. And then it pulls the ink out, and there you go. So it's not a fast process. So a plate like this, I might be able to print 3 or 4 hours. And have a third or fingerprint on it or something. Got better at that. It's not a very efficient process. I'll pass this along around. I coat the plates with oil so it doesn't corrode, so it's just in the bag. That's what it's going to take. So a few of these are this etching process, and that's very common. The thing I've always found frustrating with that is that I consider myself primarily a drawer of drawing skill. And it's frustrating basically redoing that drawing on the plate, because you really can't see what you're doing very well. And a lot of printmakers end up with very fussy drawing, or geometric, or it's just, the drawing becomes stilted, and I don't like that. So that's I've always found as a limitation. So what I came across is what I call clear plate dry point. plexiglass plate. So I can take my original drawing on high-grade biofolder paper. I take my original drawing that I developed how I want and get it where I want. Doesn't have to be finished, but you know, just worked out there, right? And then take your plexiglass and then basically scratch through it. And I can see what I'm doing. And then and it's even more advantageous with the revisions, which you always do. You start with a long straight, and you might do 5 revisions. You know, Rembrandt was famous for hardly ever doing one print the same. He would revise his plates until there was hardly anything left. He went to the plate. So this makes it really much more direct. So these are some examples of the ones in the window. It's on the cover of the book. So this is the original drawing. This is the plate. And here's various trial proofs, a couple of different papers, different types of whitening, different approaches. So I will pass this around. You can look at it. Try not to stretch the plate. So just long and short of it, I enjoy the printmaking process. I think it's a strange transition from a drawing to a print. It gives it more substance. Where you would think the drawing would have more substance because it's more immediate, but maybe it's the same transition from a drawing to a painting, but you're giving it more weight. I like the blackness, and some of my pencil is really disappeared me. Back in the 70s, I saw a show by Louise Nevelson, who of course was famous for doing everything in black, right? Everybody knows who Louise Nevelson was, right? Sculptor, who would do these walls with assemblages, you know, all kinds of junk glued together in black for the most part. So she did this series of lithographs. They were stone lithographs, and made that big. And the lithographic process is that you draw on your stone with a greasy material, something greasy. So she made these by taking cheesecloth and dipping it in touche, which is basically a grease emulsion, and laying it on the stone, and doing layer upon layer on the stone. So, and then when she printed, which I think she printed multiple stones, it was like layer upon layer of black on the paper. So in reproductions, it just looked like a solid block of black. And I've seen the reproductions, it's like, I'm sure people think it's a mistake or something, it's just a block of black. But in person, they have a great deal of presence. And it's black and black and black, like all the work was. But it's a great example of how something like that can have presence, and how, especially in that case, where reproduction of a piece of art doesn't hardly even relate to the original piece. I've always remembered that. I've never seen them again after that show. So, all right, so beyond that, I'm primarily a painter, but and I committed to figurative art, having to do with figure. And that kind of is a major artistic evolution for me, because I've always worked in a lot of different directions. And I kind of could, so I did, right? So at some point, 5, 6 years ago, I said, I gotta stop doing this. I'm doing too many different things. I'm gonna pick one thing and stick with it. I'm only gonna do figure. I don't want landscapes, nothing, figure. So that's what I do. So now this is a little bit of crap out of it, because I couldn't always do things, so maybe you can call it a distraction. But it's also another way of exploring some of the same things in another approach. So that's what's going on.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
Any
wow.
questions?
Now, your blacks, you just get them by putting lots of lines close together. Is that how you get your blacks?
Yeah. It also is how you wipe the plate. So I could take that, say everything is exactly the same, and simply wipe it more. And get more fine lines maybe, or lighter lines. So it takes some trial and error to get how you want it.
So like on here, you just kind of didn't wipe it clean.
Right. Right. That's how plate it's intentional. And some printmakers want their plate, super clean, and they want their lines really clean and crisp. But I like that painterly effect.
So John, I got a little bit lost with your technique. The plexi,
Yeah.
it's sort of like tracing paper. You can
Yeah.
you can modify and redraw your drawing.
Yeah.
So then it's on the plexi, but then how does it get from there back to paper?
That's your printing plate.
Oh, the plexi is
That is the
is
printing
printing
plate.
plate. Oh, I see. Oh,
So
and
it's-
is this the innovation?
Well,
Yeah.
no, other people do it.
Normally you use for Italian print, as John mentioned, you use a copper or a zinc plate. And with the copper and the zinc plate, you have problem to transfer your idea, or you probably had a preliminary drawing first, to bring it on this plate. While the idea of using plexiglass, so you can put the plexiglass plate on your drawing, and then you practically can transfer it easier. And you can only do this dry point needle, also not etching with acid or with electrode like plexiglass.
So I didn't actually invent the plexiglass like other people have done. I've seen it,
Yeah.
but I figured out how to do it.
I've never seen it before.
Yeah, it's not done much. That's kind of like, I'm kind of promoting it because it's such a good way of doing it.
And
Why doesn't everybody do it?
he actually built his own printing press.
Yeah, I built my own roller press. Johnson Health.
Oh, that's right. I helped out with metalwork, yep.
I love just looking at that etching. Is that an etching? Yes, it is. The one on the right.
I think that's correct.
Oh, okay.
It's like,
So this dry point,
Sure.
the plexiglass?
the plexiglass is
Okay,
right.
got it.
So I'll expand on that. So dry point, really, and what we call cold point,
Cold needle, yeah.
cold needle. On a metal plate, when you use a needle, it's like you're scratching the metal, but you're also raising a burr. So you have a little tiny burr along there, and the burr is really what holds your ink. Okay? And you get a soft line. But with a plexiglass, it doesn't really hold the burr, it just clicks off. And actually, after I do the
Inking?
drawing, I actually scrape it off. I take a really sharp blade and plane it on. Because it's going to fall off anyways. So it's really engraved.
You're getting a radically different kind of mark. You're getting a hard mark with the plexi.
Well,
and
with the
soft.
plexiglass, if you leave the burr on, the first time you print it, it comes off.
Ah,
It doesn't have any strength. But the scratch stays in.
yes, so when the burr comes off, it's a hard edge, little
Yeah.
like, so it's very different.
I can engrave, yeah. Like, your classic engraved invitations. I mean, those are literally engraved by hand. They're really sharp. Copper plate, really sharp cutter. Engraved like this. And it makes that channel, and it did that raised effect.
And
Well,
your
what I was going to say about that,
And your line the line, because of the bird, the line has what, as we call it in German, flag. That means the bird collects some of the ink you will apply to the plate. And some is, of course, in the groove itself. So you have
So it's
the
a
line,
blurrier
the line
Yeah.
blurs.
Right.
While in plexiglass, it doesn't matter. It's just there is no bird
Got it.
to catch the ink behind.
So I think what strikes me about the etchings and the dry points, and that one, looking at the one on the right with the sleeping man and the skull stone and then the mountain, there's such a, I mean, in these things, there's, eternity and then, limited life, and there's a kind of contemplation of the mystery, and there's futility, and there's in the drawings of the humans, there's vulnerability and fragility, and aging. Yeah, life and eternity. I don't know, they're good.
To expand on that a little bit, this model, I think it's the same model from Mike Affleck, who in Syracuse is a well-known figure model. And
Oh, he was the model for this?
Who?
He was your model for
model,
this?
you know, Mike?
Yeah, sure.
So all
Mike
the
was
pictures,
barefoot.
one model?
Yeah, it was gone. Barefoot Mike. Yeah. He's a winner. He walks around bare feet. Anyways, so they're almost all new. One of them's not new. Anyways, so being nude is the vulnerability, right? You strip down to human essence. Also, that's another part of it. Makes it more universal. There's no timeliness to it, or no time era identification. The other thing is that Mike is an actor, and he really enjoys acting these things out, so it's somewhat collaborative. So he was really into this, and really enjoyed the book, and whatnot. So the collaboration on that level was really interesting.
Yeah.
So we have a third party in this book who's not here. You should be here, you should be here, thank you.
You can take
Find that
it
with-
somewhere.
I have several models I use, and if you're familiar with my paintings, I have this one woman that Mohand and is in her 60s, and she models for me nude, and she's a very good actress, and she used to be a professional actress. And it's the same thing, it's a collaborative effort, and I get so much more out of her working with her than I have another model who's, I don't know, there's something perfect body, very beautiful, and it's like, it's not there. I mean, it's like, I don't get the resonance. So there is a collaboration there.
Sounds like we should have a show of your paintings. We should have a show of your paintings.
Couldn't consider that,
Not just for you.
So John, you talked about, you started out with maybe thinking about a literal translation, and then you, fairly early on, you dismissed this, so then you used that phrase.
I knew better, but I was stuck on that.
But then you use that phrase, free association,
Yeah.
but you could have said so many other, you could have said, I decided to abstract the concept, or, so can you kind of talk more about what does free association really mean for you? What does that
Yes.
mean?
Thank you. This is more guided free association. So, free association would be, so you have an idea, like automatic writing, right? I mean, that's the most free association, where, the out, that's something maybe they're gonna reform it somehow. Or collaging a bunch of random stuff, take a bunch of random stuff together and try to find meaning in it. So it kind of like your interpretation becomes a free association. A block test, you know, what does that look like? They all look like one thing, you know. So, you know, literal free association is you're starting with something totally random, and then you impinge or you put your own implications on it, your own interpretation. I think what I'm doing here on 2 levels. One level is in my creative process, I'm looking for a way of getting to an image. You know, I have the original work, the original draft that I was looking at, which I'll get back to again because I gotta admit, as soon as I started looking at it for the purpose of interpretation for this work, I became more and more confused about it. So I'm just getting down to brass tacks. What does this mean? You know? It's like, wow, it's really difficult. So I have that, and I kind of let it kind of dissolve a little bit, and let other things just come to the surface. It's like, this was really the first image I came up with, Running Man. Now, what exactly does that mean? I don't know. What does it mean to you? It means something to you. It means something different to me. It means something different to you. But it's a provocative image that evokes stuff. So I kind of do that with my art in general. For one thing, I feel as though your art needs to have a life of its own. Once you finish it, it's out there in the world. And you don't own it anymore, other people use it. I mean, if it's good, I think it's part of it being good, is having that open-endedness so other people can take what they need from it. Or
It's quite Platonian. Plato talks about this in his Parmenides dialogues. Plato. Yeah. In English, Plato.
and let it on its own.
Were you thinking Hamlet here?
That's where he's talking, he's literally talking to the stone. And he's shrugging. It's called a shrug. Right? And he's shrugging, and it's like, whatever.
I get you.
Whatever.
I like it.
I can't say that, I said
Different
that.
nuance. You can't help it.
I still have to push you.
I got it. It's kind of a Hamlet moment.
It's the Hamlet, yeah, that's the Hamlet moment, I guess. For your art, you're doing well. So let the artwork live on its own. Free association is really guided free association. I'm kind of pushing you in a different direction. It's pretty loose.
Yeah, any more questions from?
Well, I think that both of you talking and hearing the poetry has so enlarged the whole exhibition for me, and I'm just thinking about in collaboration, when Phil was reading, there's definitely a tone to Sisyphus, and the stone is talking too. So there's the hardness of the stone, but there's a little humor, like I want a little moss. Could you put a little moss on my cheek or something? Did you try to enter that tone at all? It seems as though you did.
Yeah,
I think I do in
Like
general.
if you said, what is Sisyphus's voice, you know?
You know what, I kept forgetting that he's in hell.
Oh,
It's like, oh, he's in hell. It's like, oh, wait a minute, he's in hell. But it's like, all right, what's the difference? I mean, this guy's living in hell, I'm not saying we're living in hell, but, you know, we're living, he's living. Even though he's dead, he's living, right? His day-to-day thing is pushing this stupid stone all over the place. He's doing what he has to do. He finds humor. You know, it's the basic existential thing. It's like you figure out where you are and you deal with it, right? I mean, I'm doing my good time. 50 not now.
When you sell the prints, are they edition prints or
Yeah, it's the editions
So,
of
25?
25.
Mm-hmm.
Limited to 25. So I'm selling them both as individual prints, unframed and framed, and as a total, a set of 12, in a beautiful custom portfolio for $1,800. In case you want. The unframed prints are only $150, which is one of the advantages of printmaking, is that you can sell things, you know, low price. And
Well, consider the work effort.
Right, I
You
was
know,
just thinking
you have to
Yeah.
take in each single print.
Right,
It's a lot of work.
And if you have, and there are some hand-drawn prints that are then with multiple colors, and you have to, the process with each color again, and over and again.
yeah, I have 7 months.
yeah.
For a lot of time. It was fun.
So are any more questions to the artists? Laurel?
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
then, eye-opening exhibition here.
Right, there's one more thing you haven't mentioned, you know, we have no paid staff and so forth, but also, we, everything we sell, the artwork, 75% goes to the artist, which is a lot better rate than most galleries do. So we're, you know, that's part of what we do here is support the artists. So keep that in mind as you
They're here to sign the book.
So yes, if you decide to take one of these books with you home, then you can have them
Great.
signed by the artists. Thank you. Today is the day. So, thank you.